The Love Life and Lose Weight podcast will teach you the art and science of changing your habits around food. I'm your host, advanced certified weight and life coach, Heather Beardsley. I've helped hundreds of women just like you figure out how to stop dieting, lose weight, and love life on the journey to goal weight and beyond. Hey, welcome to episode 33, How to Stop Falling Off the Weight Loss Wagon. I wanted to name this episode this because it represents this term, like I fell off the wagon. And the mindset of my clients when they say this to me represents a lot of emotional pain for them. Because it also, like, when you're in a time where life gets exceptional and you're trying to stay attached to your weight loss goal and it just feels impossible and it feels like you're letting yourself down. And then, your time to coach with your coach comes up. I mean, they really put themselves through the ringer. This story that they fell off the weight loss wagon, it feels very, very true. And it feels like an indictment against you regarding your success or failure that's happening here. And what I know as a coach is that that's never the case. And it's really important that you all understand that you can shift your perspective on this and take some actions such that you never feel like this has to happen again. Because what I know as a coach as well is that you learn weight loss in the container of a typical week, not a crazy week, not a holiday week, not a vacation week, but in a typical day-to-day blueprint of life where you have reasonable expectations over your time, your free time, your access to food, your ability to make and prepare food. It's this day-to-day where you have a good predictability as to what you've committed to, how things run. And, weight loss in that container is really pretty predictable. As long as we kind of stay true to our basics with weight loss and, and then we sort of develop our confidence in this container of the day to day. But what's inevitable and just a matter of time is that we enter into these exception times during the year. And these run the whole gamut from celebratory holidays, graduations, birthdays, even summertime, right? All the way to the other end of the spectrum from injury, surgery, rehabilitation, loss, grief, and upsetting things that just happen in life. Okay. All of those things are exception times that I know as your coach, you've got to figure out how to adapt and also stay true to your goals. So this is like, how do I want to think about how I stay connected to my goals, even in these different exception times? And you've got to play out a plan for that, get experience with it, and understand like where your level of performance is at with that. Some of the clients I've been coaching with for a long time, we've worked on, let's say, for example, the exception time of vacations for so long that they know exactly what to do now for vacations. It hardly even seems like an exception time, right? But this is the point of my podcast, is that weight loss happens in a period of time. For most of my clients, it can be up to a couple of years, sometimes more. And that's just because I know you've got to play out through these exception times, number one. Number two, you've got to learn what doesn't work in order for you to learn what does work. And number three, you've got to have enough experiences that tap on your limiting beliefs about weight loss so you can work through those challenges and through those sort of failures, if you will, to figure out what those limiting beliefs are. You know, like the only way you'll discover them is if you discover their hold over you in exceptional times, right? So this is why, even though you may only have, I don't know, 25 pounds to lose, 50 pounds, 75 pounds, it doesn't really matter. Your journey to creating a food lifestyle that is truly sustainable for you through both the exceptional times in life and the typical day to day takes time to establish. Okay. So the question is, why don't we just think about it that way naturally? Well, we just don't. Because, I mean, think about the mindset of you who wants to lose weight and who's never kind of figured out how to lose weight and keep it off without it feeling hard or restrictive. Well, you've probably told yourself, like, there's something I'm not getting about me and food, me and my food habits. Like, something is up with that. And so you join a program like this, or you work with a coach to try to help you see through some of these mysteries for you about like why you haven't figured it out. Right. So you're kind of flying blind a little bit. And the brain simplifies the problem here by saying, well, we got to figure out the method to lose weight and create a food lifestyle for life. And then we've got to hold on to and practice that method no matter what. And this is why when vacation time comes and it's time to take that vacation, we take that method that we learned for weight loss in the regular day to day and we try to jam it into our vacation. And then we're over our own shoulder with our, observation of how much we're unable to do on vacation, what we thought we could do, because we think that weight loss is a single modality that has to be forced onto all these different phases and changes and exceptions of our life. It's like a one shot deal. And the truth that I know as your coach is that, yes, we learn weight loss in the typical day to day. And then your application, your practice, your analog practice of weight loss is played out in these exception times. And we've got to stumble through them in order to figure out what works. Now, that being said, there is an easier way to do it. And that way is to proactively plan for exception times, to recognize when they're coming, when they are predictable. Of course, sometimes they're unpredictable. Maybe you trip and fall and you break your ankle and you need surgery. And, that's an exception time. That's going to put a lot of pressure on you. Of your time, your bandwidth, your energy, your mobility, and your emotions, right? And also like managing pain all comes in there. They were inserting all this stuff because of this new circumstance into the playing field of weight loss, right? Or we're trying to insert typical weight loss into an exceptional time. It doesn't work. So what we do, since we can't change circumstances when stuff like that happens, and we don't want to, say, for example, when it's a vacation, we have to adapt the approach and the expectation for how we stay connected to our goals by thinking about what we will do on purpose for each individual exception time. Now, the nice thing about like weaving in exception times as part of your weight loss process is that some of these exception times, like I mentioned before, vacations is a good example. Holidays is another good example. Let's say you're a mom of little kids and they're out of school in the summertime and your schedule has to change then as well. That would be an exception time too. Is that once we start working with our exception protocol for that particular situation, you can kind of just use that template over and over again. You just continue to refine it, use it, see what results it gets you, and then keep working at it until it sort of becomes like the new version of normal, right? It's no longer quite an exception time because you have enough practice with it. Um, so as a coach, it's a little heartbreaking to hear clients really like telling this terrible story about how they failed or they let themselves down because, let's say somebody died in their family. That's an exception time. Okay. And they're just like, they're dealing with grief, they're dealing with family, they're dealing with arrangements, right? And it's a lot to ask yourself to follow like weight loss basics in such an exception time. Like I've often said, when one of my clients' parents dies, like weight loss just isn't important. Okay. This is not something that we want to even try to train for, right? It's just a time that we just need to kind of be compassionate and allowing of the process that is front and center. Your nervous system will be so jacked up and stressed out and dealing with the new normal that you're just going to be sort of like your um primal mechanisms are just going to go on autopilot. Okay. You're not going to be able to really intervene too much with all of that going on. Okay. So that's sort of the extreme example of exception times. And, you can contrast that with like, hey, how do you want to go through the holidays each year at the end of every year? What makes weight loss hard during the holidays? What's typical? What typically happens? Okay, let's make an exception protocol for that and let's build on it. Let's try to make it doable, where you decide ahead of time what you want to happen. And yes, you can do this during the holidays, unlike something like extreme, like a loss of a family member. Okay. So, but even with the loss of a family member, you can decide how you want to go through this. Okay. The thing about exception protocols and exception plans is that they're unique to you. Um, they apply to you from your current habits as they are right now. So I have some steps for you. But before I go through them for how to create this exception plan, there's a concept that I want to illustrate, which is that, the weight loss in the day to day is what the mind clings to as the one way to lose weight. And when the exception time comes around, the mind tends to really cling onto it. So I want you to anticipate this. I want you to really be aware of it. Think about America's Funniest Home Videos. We've all seen those videos where it's usually a party and somebody is on camera, like they're being filmed. They've got a drink in their hand and they fall. And they don't let go of the drink. You ever notice this? Even if it's like falling downstairs, they don't let go of that drink or whatever's in their hand. They won't let it go. We see this in newborn babies too. They just like have this natural urge to grasp onto something, to hold on to something. And this is a product of our human mind and body. It's like we want to hold on to that which we've told our brain is important. And you're going to have this tendency to hold on to typical ways you lose weight and think about how you should perform, what you should do, and what you should not do, even during exceptional times. And the exception plan that you're going to make by the end of the day today, hopefully, is that I'm encouraging you to put the glass down, stop clinging to the old way. We don't want to force performance of typical weight loss that we do on a normal day into an exceptional time. It just doesn't work. That actually is how you have the impression that you've fallen off the weight loss wagon. That's how we do it. We cling to the old way. We don't make any exception to the expectation of our performance, even in exceptional times. And this is the main idea of this podcast today, is that weight loss has to fit into a fully dynamic life that has both typical weeks where there's nothing extraordinary really going on and you have good expectations of like your performance and what you can do and don't do. And lots of times within that calendar year that are exception times. And our weight loss strategies have to be flexible and adaptive to going between those two things, the typical weeks and the exception weeks or days, whatever it might be. Okay. So it's just as important to have a strategy for exception times as it is for a typical day to day in order for you to be consistent and stay attached to your goals, even through exception times, so that you never have to fall off the weight loss wagon. You never have to have or even believe that that's a thing that can happen. You know why? I know it can. It can happen. You can stay on the weight loss wagon because you have a manager brain that can project into the future and adapt to new circumstances. And your weight loss strategies can come right along for the ride with that. Okay. So let's go over how to create an exception plan. The first step is to figure out which topic you're planning for. So take a look at your calendar now. Like, just look at the calendar month by month and identify the next exception time that you can kind of predict that's going to happen over the next 3 months. Okay. And after the call is done, I want you to come back to the calendar and predict your exception times for the next year from today. That'll probably include vacations, holidays at a minimum, maybe times when you don't feel good. Like for many of you, that it might even be a period protocol. When you feel differently, you have different tastes and preferences for food, different energy requirements, and different ways that your body holds or retains water or inflammation sometimes, and it can be reflective on the scale. It's a perfect exception plan to make for yourself. Okay. So identify an exception time that's coming up in the next 3 months. I want you to start with number one for any exception plan. What is the topic that you'll know when you're approaching this time? So let's say it's summer break for your kids and you stay home with them. You got littles. Well, that would be probably the day they get out of school, right? Until the day they go back or something like that. So and then you want to put it on the calendar, because what's going to happen is you're just going to be chugging along with life, rinsing and repeating typical days. And then, oopsie, it's time to pick the kids up from their last day of school. And if you haven't anticipated that you're about to go into this exception time within 5 days, I see it all the time. And I used to live this. 5 days into the summer vacation that you just were thinking was going to be amazing, you're like tired, exhausted, no one's taking a nap, you need to go to the grocery store, and you've overeaten 5 times. Okay. It doesn't work. Like, even if you're able to like hold it together and like do a bunch of awesome stuff, even with this new exception time, if you haven't created a plan on purpose, you're just going to be judging your performance all the time, because remember, the mind is grasping onto the ideal day and week and how much this week isn't like that and how it feels like we're falling off the wagon of weight loss. You see? Okay, so here's how we do it. You just put it on the calendar and you do the plan before you're in the time. Okay. You do it from a place of like calm, where it just can project what's needed and what you want to do during this exception time. So the second question is, what expectations of your actions, what you're doing and what you're not doing, need to happen? So how do you figure this out? Well, you time travel. You project the you now into the you who is got littles and now you're on summer break. Okay. And you ask yourself, is it reasonable for me to expect to continue with all the weight loss things that I've normally been doing when I lose weight on a typical day? And can I place that container into this exception time? You got to really like think about your day. Like, what is my day like? How does it change in the morning? Will I still plan my food, and my daily activities the same way that I do now? Now, for that mom, maybe not. Maybe the kids are up early. Maybe she'll plan in a new place. Maybe we need a simpler planner. Okay. This is just you rewriting the game board, if you will, that you use to play out weight loss in this exception time. So you definitely want to consider your planning, whether it needs to be simplified and how. The kinds of foods that you're exposed to. Yeah, if you're with your little kids all day, you're going to be exposed to them and a lot of their foods and cooking their foods. How will your food, how do you want that to play out with the kids' food? And always, I want to encourage you to hit the easy button with this. Like, it's real tempting to think you'll go through heroic measures because you'll have time and it really matters. And you don't want to be eating the kids' chicken nuggets off their plates, right? But the truth is, probably sometimes that might be the best thing. If you have an afternoon where the kids aren't just not in a place to have it be convenient for you to make your own food. Maybe you make it the night before. Maybe you pack picnic lunches on Wednesdays when you pick them up from their camp or something like that. Okay. But it's going to take a little bit of time for you to really like play out you and how you want to eat in order to stay attached to your weight loss goal during this exception time. Write down the expectations that will change for yourself and exactly what that looks like. I will make the switch to a very simple planning system where I only write down my foods on my phone. I'm not going to have time to use the typical planner that I use. And I will go back to using the typical planner the day the kids go back to school. Okay, maybe something like that. How will your movement change? That's another one. Maybe you'll be exercising with the kids instead of by yourself. Something like that. Okay. And that's really most of it. I mean, the other details will come to you as you project what your day is like during this exception time. Remember, you're going to be hitting the easy button. But here is the biggest tip I can give you if you, like we all do. We want to stay attached to weight loss during exception times as much as it's like reasonable and possible to think that you can. Only you can make that decision from a place of like gut checking it and really asking yourself, like, is it compassionate of me to expect myself to continue to lose weight during this time? Like, if I'm going to go back in the Wayback Machine with myself as a mom, stay-at-home mom taking care of kids during the summer, like I would say yes. I would say actually that's a great time because I do have more time. And I think I would have the bandwidth to do that. But figure out what exception time you're talking about that you're planning for and ask yourself, something called the Pareto principle can really help you here. And I'm just going to give you like the answer here. If weight loss is something you want to stay attached to, I want you to think of the Pareto principle for weight loss that I teach. And we teach inside of No BS pretty much. It's not really explained this way inside the membership, but this is my version of it. Pareto principle says that there are 20% of efforts in any endeavor that are responsible for 80% of your results. So these are the efforts that would directly affect your ability to lose weight based on how I teach it, right? And That is okay. So, what are the elements? Let's find the 20%. Well, that's not easy. Sorry, it's not hard to figure out, right? To find the 20% that gives you the most results, you would just ask yourself, what is the one thing such that if you took it away, your results would be impossible to get? And so for intuitive eating, that would be staying your Pareto principle is to stay attached to doable hunger. Many clients and members think this is the plan, and it just isn't. Like the plan helps you with so much to create a lifestyle that you love as you lose weight and to become a person who does what she says she's going to do, to be really intentional. I mean, there's so many great reasons to plan, but planning doesn't make you lose weight. It's waiting for physical hunger before you eat, not eating when you're not hungry, and controlling the amount of times that you indulge in overeating. And so, what that means is that you have a habit of mostly stopping at enough before you're full, and that you do that about 80% of the time. Okay. But 80% of the time that you are only eating when you feel physical hunger. So, the reason why I bring this up is because if you want to stay attached to weight loss during an exception time when you have a lot of pressures on your bandwidth, your mental, emotional, time, money, maybe financial, who knows? The one thing that you can stay attached to that will give you the most results is to just bring your stomach with you at every decision. You don't have to have a plan to lose weight. You don't have to drink all your water sometimes to lose weight. I mean, it helps, and it helps to get enough sleep too. But a lot of people lose weight without getting optimal water and optimal sleep. They're important, but they're not the Pareto principle. The Pareto principle is doable hunger. Okay. There's no way around it. It's just obvious. So that is the thing that you got to stay attached to for consistency with your weight loss over the course of a year that toggles between a regular week and an exceptional week, just depending on what's going on. Okay. You are adjusting your expectations. You have a clear entry time and exit time of this exception time. And how will you know when it's over? If you're not sure, take a guess. Not all things have a resolution, especially things that are unpredictable. But just do your best to give your brain some clarity. Take a guess. Okay. You can always adjust your guess if you need to. And then finally, the last part of your exception plan or protocol is to decide what your reentry will look like. So this works really well. I have a lot of experience with this with vacations, especially like longer vacations, like summer vacations abroad, where when you get back home, like maybe you're jet lagged and there's no food in the house and you just take a while to adjust back to like quote normal life. There's a lot to catch up on, laundry, unpacking, all of these things. So your re-entry, like it's not, in other words, it's not enough to just say, okay, the day the kids go back to school, I'm going to go right back to, practicing weight loss as if it's a normal week. Give yourself the buffer before you say you're out of the plan. But when it's time to start transitioning, make a transition plan. Like, okay, after the kids go back to school, I may want to, put some summer things away. I may want to, take a couple days for mom for some mom time, decompress from the summer, maybe do some reflections as to this summer exception plan, how it went, what your results were, just plan some transition time, okay, for yourself. You usually need it, and it can really help you to be really flexible with yourself as you move toward getting back to what feels like normal weight loss. Okay. So I hope it's been helpful for you. A lot of coaches like to say there is no wagon to fall off of. But that's not really true, right? Like we've all had this idea of feeling like life happened and we couldn't perform well enough and we fell off the wagon. Um, and that is real. That is real when you think about it like that. It's real for you. What I'm suggesting is that you just give yourself a different perspective of like, how can I change the expectations of myself and my weight loss through different times in my life where I have different pressures on me. Some are positive, some will be really challenging, but I always want to have my own back with anything that I expect myself to do, including weight loss. Okay. So I hope it's been helpful. Visit me on Instagram at Thrive in Midlife, episode 33 Reel. If you have any thoughts about exception plans or exception protocols, reach out there and we can keep the conversation going. Before I leave you, I want to just remind you that I have a book coming out. It's the companion book for this podcast. Book one is about it's going to like condense all of the information for how to get started with weight loss in book one. It's going to have all of your homework in one place. And the book should be coming out sometime this summer. I have the manuscript and I'm reading it this weekend. And then I'm going to make any last minute changes. And then we're going to set a publication date. And I would love for you all to stay connected with my work by staying connected to this book that's coming out. It's very exciting. So join the email list so that you can stay on top of all of the happenings and, maybe we'll do a book launch party virtually or something that'll be fun. I think that I'll offer a special webinar class for like the first 30 days for weight loss to help you have like a container for how to get some results in the first 30 days. I want to offer that to all of you who buy my book and, give me a nice review on Amazon. Like I'm going to just make it really easy for you all to get started and get some wins. And, I just appreciate you following along with my journey. It means a lot to me. Okay. So thank you. Stay focused and we'll talk soon. So long. Hey, if this episode was helpful, then let's connect. Visit hbeardsley.com/subscribe. That's HBEARDSLEY.com/subscribe. You'll get a gift from me, exclusive subscriber content, and advanced notice of in-person events.